it's not just falling in love. You know, there's a certain obligation to people you film to. The reality is enormous. I mean, you get plunked down with some mule skinners, you end up in a stained glass factory, you end up in the Kalahari Desert. It's big. And you have to figure out, you know, how's this situation unique, and how's this situation universal, and you know, what the heck is actually going on, and how can you capture a little slice of that enormity that someone, you know, years later in a different time and place can get a sense of the event and a sense of the place. As you can tell from these clips, you know, I was always fascinated by how things got done, whether it was how music got made, how you make a stained glass window, how you survive in the Kalahari or survive in the Himalayan village. These are things that really deeply interested me as a filmmaker. But what you do in these films like this, it's not, you're not making a catalog, it's not a list of things, it's not a succession of, you're not going down the list. Muriel Rukeyser, the poet, said at one point, the world is made of stories, not atoms. And I think as far as human consciousness goes, that's very true. In The Land Where the Blues Began, there was a scene that we didn't have of a minister who was he was a freelance minister. He was doing a revival service, and at the end of the revival, he had to pitch, that his services could be hired for other things, and he started listing the sermons that he thought he should come back and preach. He had done The Eagle Stirs Her Nest, and he said he wants to come back and preach Calvary, and I want to come back and preach Jonah in the belly of the whale, and I want to come back and preach the man who had something to tell. And I thought, I don't know what that sermon is. I never heard it. But I knew exactly what he was talking about. I imagine it's kind of like, the rhyme of the ancient mariner who stoppeth one of three and held him with his glittering eye until he had unburdened himself of some piece of precious knowledge that had to be told to another person. When you show up with a camera, people all have a lot to say. Sometimes, their story isn't that interesting. But part of being loved is being able to tell your unique story and have someone listen and record it. But they almost always give you a gift, some gift that you're grateful for. In the fiddle film, Jerry Robichaud, who's a maritime Canadian fiddler, talked very nicely about where he learned and all. And then he was saying, it's all in the bow. And you have to pick up on your way down what you lost on the way up. Dude, you nailed it. And this last week at the Women in Tap, Diane Walker was in a panel, and someone had one of those whiny questions. And Diane said, honey, if it's not your trip, don't pick up the baggage. If I had learned that, some years back, my life would have been so much easier. And then there's Samuel Johnson, who I didn't actually interview because he wrote this in 1775. But he said, and this is relevant to the kind of films I make, that the irregular combinations of fanciful invention may delight a while, but the mind can only repose on the stability of truth. That's pretty heavy stuff. But it's true. I mean, he was a smart man. You can make stuff up, like MTV. You can juxtapose, wildly cut everything, and it reads. We get excited by it. But if you're going to make films that are going to last, they have to have some validity to them, something deeper. I'm bragging on myself. But most films go to enormous lengths to create a fiction that looks real. Any Hollywood film, most documentaries, almost any film is made to create a smooth illusion that you're getting an experience that you'll take and get the message that the filmmaker wants to deliver. And I realized somewhere in working in ethnographic film that these are films that try to be real even if they don't look real. It's kind of tweak, but it's quite true that sometimes the reality doesn't look like it should. But what you're trying to do is get yourself out of there and try and get some intuition of what really lasts. Edmund Carpenter, see, I had to put in a few illusions or else he wouldn't let me be in an academic institution. Edmund Carpenter said at one point that fake art reveals itself after about 40 years. Because fakes draw on the energy of the audience they're produced for, not the energy that created the form that's being imitated. And, you know, like King Tut, you know, every few years King Tut comes around and you get a King Tut shower curtain, King Tut coffee mug, King Tut bling. And you know, at the moment it seems like you're right, you're in the King Tut, group. But after a few years, King Tut's, everyone's forgotten King Tut, and it's just bling. This is really heavy stuff, you know. I'd like to joke about it, but I'm giving you the pip instruction here. It's my last chance. But I think it's the same is true for ethnographic film, that a good ethnographic film is going to be readable in 20, 30, 40 years if it's actually captured the kind of real essence, and it isn't just what a clever filmmaker I was, what a great philosophical whatever I was. You know, if you can submerge the authorship, submerge the ego, and let the subject speak into the film, then hopefully the film will have some lasting value. I haven't lived long enough to find out if even my earliest film has reached that point, but I got my fingers crossed. Now, I was really nervous, so I wrote a lot of stuff. I'll skip ahead. It's very hard to skip ahead. I mean, it's really good stuff. Okay.